3 sinister true stories of haunted endings, terrifying secrets revealed before summer's end. Heather had high hopes when she moved to Maplewood. The quaint suburb promised a fresh start after her divorce. The charming colonial house, with its squeaky wraparound porch and white picket fence, looked like paradise. For the first time in years, Heather hoped for peace for her and her 2 daughters, Ava and Lily. But as summer stretched on, the quiet suburban sounds felt less like a cozy embrace and more like a warning. Strange things started to happen. At night, Heather could hear scratching sounds above her, as if something was playing in the attic. Whispers floated down the stairs, breathy, muffled voices that sent chills racing across her skin. Shadows flickered and danced at the edge of her vision, but when she turned, nothing was there. Panic gripped her, tightening around her chest like a vice. One evening, huddled in the living room with Ava and Lily, she tried to brush it off. Must be an animal, she told her daughters, but her voice trembled. The truth was, her heart pounded each time she climbed those creaky stairs to bed. As she unpacked an old box in the attic, her fingers brushed against a crumpled newspaper clipping. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The headline screamed a gruesome tale of horror: murder in her very home, unsolved and shrouded in shivers. The article had details that twisted in her gut, as the old crime had become local folklore. The whispers she heard now transformed into frantic warnings from the past. Seeking comfort, Heather turned to Jim, her friendly neighbor, who always wore a bright smile and carried dinner. "You're just settling in," he laughed off her fears, but there was a glint in his eye that unsettled her even more. As summer's days dragged on, she began to notice frayed edges in Jim's kindness. Besides, as Ava and Lily rode their bikes down the street, they too could feel invisible eyes watching from the trees. The neighborhood's warmth began to chill. One morning, looking out on their cute porch, Heather's blood ran cold. Symbols were etched into the wood, scratched, angry marks that sent her thoughts spiraling. "Just kids messing around," she whispered, though her heart raced, horror gnawing at her insides. But then the odd behaviors began. Her daughters jumpy, restless, claiming they felt someone lurking just outside their window. Determined to unveil the truth, Heather dove into the history of Maplewood. What she found rattled her more than the rumors about Jim. Unexplained disappearances, neighbors who vanished without a trace like ghosts swallowed by this suburban facade. The cozy picture of community was painted with bloodlines that tangled in danger. As she pieced it together, the shadows creeping along the walls felt more sinister, and each creak of the house echoed with menace as if it were warning her to leave. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the summer solstice approached, the weight grew heavier on Heather's shoulders. She felt it in her bones. The house, once a sanctuary, was a trap. She was running out of time. The night before the solstice, she confronted Jim on her front porch. The air crackled, and fear pulsed in her throat as his smile twisted, a predator hidden behind a friendly facade. Just then, a note slipped under her door, chilling and urgent. "Leave before the summer ends, or you'll join the others." Heather's heart thundered as she ripped it open. The shadows loomed larger, and all she could think was, would they become the next tale whispered about in fear? The night wrapped around Heather like a thick fog, each sound amplified in the darkness. She paced the living room, her mind racing. The note clutched in her hand felt like a death sentence. She could almost hear her heart beating in time with the creaks of the floorboards. The attic called to her, siren-like, promising answers but cloaked in dread. What secrets lay beneath that peeling ceiling? "Mom, I don't like it here," Ava whispered, her small voice trembling. The shadows seemed to curl around the girl, palpable and menacing. Lily clung to her sister, eyes wide with fear. "I know, sweetie. We'll be okay," Heather forced herself to say, though the words felt empty. Her fingers tightened around the note as if it could protect them. She couldn't show her girls the terror unfurling in her mind, she had to stay strong. But how could she protect them when they were already being hunted? That night, sleep eluded Heather. She lay in a cold sweat, listening to the house breathe. Was that whispering? Or was it just her imagination running wild? Every low creak echoed with the ghosts of Maplewood, stories whispered in the dark, tales woven from the threads of despair. As the clock ticked toward midnight, she finally slipped out of bed, drawn towards the attic once more. Each step up the stairs felt like a countdown. The door to the attic creaked open, revealing a dark chasm. As she stepped inside, the air grew stale, thick with the weight of 1,000 unspoken horrors. A single beam of moonlight cut through the gloom, illuminating the old box she had opened earlier. It beckoned her, like a dark treasure chest just waiting to spill its secrets. She opened it again. The same crumpled newspaper stared back at her, but this time, something else caught her eye. A journal lay beneath the clipping, its leather cover cracked and dusty. Hesitation pricked at her. Should she read it? But the whispers grew louder, surging like a tide, urging her to dive deeper. With trembling fingers, she flipped it open. The pages were lined with frantic scrawls, each entry more frantic than the last. They spoke of rituals and offerings made to keep something at bay. Names she didn't recognize, but one stood out, a name she had come across in her research, a victim of the unsolved murder from years before. Wendy Green, Heather read aloud, the name wrapping around her throat like a noose. The entries hinted at a dark bargain, something sinister that demanded what it craved when summer waned the blood of innocence. This was no mere haunting, it was a curse that had waxed and waned with the moon and the seasons. Suddenly, the scratching noise echoed again, louder, more insistent. Heather's heart raced as she snapped the journal shut. It was coming from behind the wall, as if something was trying to get out. Or in. Fear rooted her to the spot, but she knew in her bones that she had to take action. The shadows in the corners seemed to slither closer. Gripping the journal tightly, Heather backed away towards the stairs. She needed to get her girls and leave, but as she turned, thick darkness enveloped the attic, chilling her to the core. The scratching morphed into pounding. Someone or something was trying to get in. Mom! Ava's voice pierced through the terror, thin and shaky. Hastily, Heather rushed down the stairs, her heart hammering as she called for her daughters. The front door swung open, revealing Jim, standing on the porch with an unsettling smile. "Everything okay?" "Thought I heard something," he said, the glint in his eye shimmered with something terrible as shadows danced behind him. "Get away from here!" Heather shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins. But the air shifted, and with it the chilling reality sank in. She was not alone. Something had come back with her to the house, hungry for what it had lost. That eye and the flickering porch light, Heather realized the dark truth. Maplewood was not merely haunted, it was alive with vengeance. As Jim stepped closer, the shadows twisted around him, tightening their grip. "Join the others?" he asked, his voice dripping with mockery, a sickening softness that sent ice coursing through her veins. As the darkness closed in, Heather had one petrifying thought: what if all of this was just the beginning? The candle flickered in the dim hallway, casting long shadows that clung to the walls like desperate hands. Heather's breath came in short gasps as she shoved past Jim, the door slamming behind her, the sound echoing through the stillness like an alarm bell. "Mom! What is happening?" Ava grabbed her hand, her little palm trembling. Lily shrank back, eyes wide, tracing the shadows that danced along the walls. Heather didn't answer. They needed to run. "Where do we go?" Ava's voice wavered. Panic kicked in, clawing at Heather's insides. She could hear the whispers again, soft, mocking. Something was very wrong. She was fighting against the tide of darkness, and time was slipping through her fingers. "Mom! What about the attic?" Lily squeaked, pointing towards the stairs as if it was a sanctuary. But Heather felt a chill surge through her. The attic was no refuge, it was a tomb. "Stay close," she hissed, sending a glance at Jim, who hadn't moved from the porch. He remained still, a stone gargoyle in the flickering light, his eyes glinting with malevolent delight. Had he always been this way? She remembered their neighbor's warm smile, the way he used to play with the kids in the yard. Now, shadows twisted behind him like serpents, seeking an opening to sneak in. With every passing second, it felt like the house was alive, breathing, hungry. Heather turned to her daughters, urging them forward. "We need to check the car," she whispered, her voice thick with urgency. As they stepped into the night, the air was electric with dread. Darkness wrapped around them tightly, and she searched for the car's glow in the driveway. It was their lifeline, their way out, and it felt like a faded dream. But then a soft giggle, close. Heather's blood ran cold. It wasn't her daughters. "Mom." Ava whimpered. "Who was that?" "Don't look back. Just keep walking." Heather's heart raced as she ushered Ava and Lily toward the car. The giggle turned into a shrill laugh, echoing through the trees like a macabre lullaby. Where was that sound coming from? Behind her, Jim's voice curled like smoke, drifting on the air. "Don't go so soon, Heather. Why leave when the night is just beginning?" Panic pumped through her veins, the echo of that laughter mingling with the darkness that coiled tighter at her feet. Their little family was unraveling before her, each step a countdown as she fumbled with the keys. "Mom, I'm scared." Lily clung to her, eyes darting about. The shadows grew restless, slithering toward them. "Get in the car," Heather commanded, her voice cracking. She swung the door open, ushered them in one after the other, breathing heavily with each pulse of pressure rising in her chest. The engine sputtered, barely alive. "Please, please, please," she whispered as she turned the key again. The car roared to life, but as she glanced into the rearview mirror, her heart ceased. There was nothing but darkness behind them. No driveway, no trees, only a void that threatened to swallow them whole. "Mom! What's wrong?" Ava cried, bewildered. "Just hold on." She slammed her foot on the gas, hoping to escape whatever beast lurked in the night. As the tires screeched and the road ahead tilted into darkness, the car jolted. Something had landed on the roof. "Mom! What is that?" Lily's voice trembled. "Nothing. Just hold on tight." Heather gripped the wheel, scanning the edges of the road. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of angry voices, drowning her thoughts. Suddenly, the car tilted wildly, and Heather screamed as the shadows wrapped around the vehicle. She could feel something dragging, pulling them into the impenetrable dark. Gripping the wheel, she fought to maintain control, aware that the darkness outside wasn't just quiet, it was pulsing with life. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice barely above the roar as she wrestled against the force pulling them back toward the house, and then she heard a voice, low and sinister, cutting through the chaos. "She's just what we need, one more offering." As the shadows began to close in, choking off the engine's roar, Heather's thoughts spun. How can you escape a trap that's been set for generations? With a final desperate breath, she shouted, "Get off my car." Steering hard, she veered into the onslaught of darkness. The trees rushed by, but they seemed to twist, barreling in, as if the earth itself had turned against her. And then came the voice again, sharper this time. "She has been chosen." The car jolted violently. Heather gripped the wheel, eyes wide as the headlights caught a flicker of movement. Shapes, too fast, diving toward them. And just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went black. As silence enveloped them, Heather was left with one haunting realization: they were not alone and the darkness had plans for them. What would happen next in a place where no light existed? The car stalled in silence, the engine's desperate cough fading into the oppressive darkness. Heather blinked, trying to dispel the shadows closing in around them, but they seemed eager to swallow her whole. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest, each beat marked by elemental fear. "Mom." Ava's voice shattered the stillness. It was small, fragile, a pleading echo that made Heather's stomach twist. Heather whispered urgently. The whispering had stopped, but the air was thick with an unshakable dread. The world outside the windows felt like a different existence, every swallow of the night air saturated with foreboding. "We need to get away from here," she fumbled for the ignition key. But when she turned it, nothing came. The battery was dead. "Mom! What do we do?" Lily whimpered, her little face stricken with fear. Heather looked at her girls, and the darkness around them seemed to pulse in response, eager to pick them off one by one. "Stay close," she said, straining to keep her voice steady while fear gnawed at her. The windows were down slightly, and she could feel a chill creeping inside, almost like icy fingers tracing her spine. A howl broke the quiet, followed by the chorus of horrifying laughter. Heather's skin prickled as she realized the laughter didn't sound like children. It was something else, lighter but twisted, mocking their terror. Then, from the peripheral shadows, something skittered across the roof of the car. Heather turned and saw a small silhouette, then another. A wave of cold coursed through her as ghostly forms converged toward the glass, their faces indistinct but filled with a malevolence that froze her blood. "Mom!" Ava shouted, grabbing her arm, her little fingers digging in with panic. "What is that?" Heather couldn't speak. The figures were in flux, one moment a child, another an adult. They pressed against the windshield, wailing a cacophony of sorrow and rage wrapped in a desperate plea. "No!" she screamed, backing against the seat. The air felt brittle, the shadows seemed to elongate, cocooning the car tighter. "Let us get out!" yelled Ava, her voice urgent. "We can run." "No. We can't." But doubt crept through her as their situation pressed down like an iron weight. If they got out, would they be consumed by whatever was hunting them? A sharp rap. A pointed knock on the side of the car made her jump. "Mom!" There Lily's breath fell into a hush, eyes wide as saucers. Heather turned to her, the horror of the situation reflected back at her in her daughter's gaze. "Close your eyes!" she shouted again, feeling desperation seep under her skin. But the shadows pulsed louder, anger surging, and through that darkness, she could feel the pulse of something approaching just beyond their reach. Offering echoed a voice from the void, dripping with malice. What did it want? She had to hold on to control, to her sanity. She began chanting under her breath. "We are strong. We are strong." The words felt foolish, desperately pathetic against the horror surrounding them, but she needed to believe it. Then, they felt it, a lurch, then another. The car shifted as the dark weight intensified. The shadows outside pressed forward, and Heather felt herself teetering on the edge of terror and despair. "Let us go!" she screamed, adrenaline surging, and yet even then, her heart sank as a familiar twisted laughter erupted anew, filling the air like smoke. Suddenly, the driver's side door unlatched with a creak, swinging open toward the night as if beckoning her. The darkness spilled in, thick with whispers, slick as oil. The girls screamed. Heather lunged for the door, attempting to pull it shut, but the shadows surged, eager to drag them to an unseen fate. "Run!" she yelled, shoving her daughters out of the car and following them into the wild night. But as they raced away from the vehicle, the shadows condensed, consolidating their wrath. They could hear the laughter morph into something more sinister, an ancient chant resonating through the air, pulling at their very souls. Heather drove forward, heart racing, but deep down, she questioned if the night would ever release them. The shadows twisted around a figure in the hollowed path ahead, materializing into form, each edge sharpened by fear. What did it want from them? And under that rigid face, behind those unfathomable eyes, lay the dark truth that once unveiled could change everything. The ground felt uneven under their feet as Heather, Ava, and Lily tumbled into the night, the weight of shadows chasing them like wolves. Cold air clawed at their lungs, and fear turned each breath shallow. No goodbye, no lingering glances at the car, they had no time. All that mattered was the next step away from the encroaching darkness. Ava and Lily clutched each other, fragile like porcelain dolls, their wide eyes reflecting pure terror. As they stumbled through the underbrush, branches grabbed at their clothes, scratching at Heather's arms like skeletal fingers. The forest held its breath, a living entity that pulsated in rhythm with their pounding hearts. Just ahead, a distant glow flickered through the trees, a stark contrast to the suffocating blackness swirling around them. Heather hesitated, thought of running toward that light, a glimmer of hope, but the laughter twisted through the branches, cutting through her resolve. The sound wrapped around her heart like a vice. "Mom, I don't want to go back," Ava whimpered, her voice trembling. "They're coming." "I know, sweetie, just hold on," Heather urged, trying to inject calm into her words as dread pooled in her stomach. They pushed forward, drawn toward the faint gleam, every instinct screaming to flee, but as they neared the light, the trees began to warp, their branches stretching and twisting into grotesque forms. Each step felt like they were tipping into a nightmare, a descent into madness that clawed at her mind. "Stop!" bellowed a voice from behind, rich and sonorous, thick with menace. It reverberated, the vibrations almost tangible as the girls turned to see shadows forming into indistinct shapes, grotesque and elongated. The figures oozed malice, their laughter a haunting melody echoing through the night air, mixing with the echo of their footsteps. Heather felt her blood run cold. "Run!" she shouted, panic driving her legs faster. But the shadows surged forward, a mass of darkness that seemed to pulse with their fear. She could feel it, a presence laden with an insatiable hunger. "What do you want?" she screamed into the void, her voice rising in desperation, trying to regain some influence over the situation. Silence followed, heavy and leaden, as if the universe itself paused, waiting. A smooth whisper curled around them. "A favor," it taunted, drawing out each syllable. For a chance to escape. Heather's veins chilled. She didn't want to know what that favor entailed, dread twisting tighter in her chest. "But the light," Lily pleaded. "What if we can reach it? What if it's safety?" But Heather shook her head, doubt consuming her. The light pulsed through the trees, beckoning them, but it shimmered with an eerie glow that sent a shiver down her spine. How could things so wrong feel so right? The shadows closed in again, fatter now, more tangible. A figure stood at the forefront, the silhouette sharp against the fading light. Its head tilted, amusement dancing across its darkened face, revealing glimmers of white teeth, a ghastly smile. "Are you ready to bargain?" the creature cooed, its voice sickly sweet. "Bargain with you?" Heather felt the word stick in her throat, her instincts screaming against it. "Every shadow has a price, dear one," it continued, the laughter creeping back, igniting the terror buried deep within. "Mom!" Ava cried, squeezing her sister's hand tighter. They were segments of fear fused together, small bodies trembling under the weight of impossibility. The creature lunged forward, snapping the air with a palpable hunger. Heather instinctively stepped back, dragging her daughters with her, searching for a way to escape. But which way was escape when the shadows surrounded them, tightening like a noose? Then, the light swelled more intensely. Was it hope? Or a trap? "Run!" she yelled, a primal scream of defiance spilling into the night. In that instant, they surged toward the glow, hearts pounding, breathless. But just as they thought they grasped the edge of safety, the air shimmered, the light ebbing as the darkness lunged after them. The laughter swelled, an overwhelming wave of sound, sweeping them back. What had they awakened in the shadows? And would it take everything she had to fight for their freedom? The light flickered behind them, teasingly bright, yet threatening to snuff out entirely. Heather's heart pounded like a drum in her chest, each beat a countdown to something worse than she could ever imagine. The laughter grew louder, oppressive, filling every crevice of the night. She felt the air thicken, almost viscous, as if they were wading through darkness itself. "Keep running!" she shouted, shoving Ava and Lily forward, her panic fueling their escape. They stumbled over roots and rocks, the ground tearing at their shoes, but they pressed on, driven by sheer instinct, Heather stole a glance back. The creature loomed closer, a shadow shrouded in sinuous darkness. Its form shifted, coiling and unfurling like smoke. She could almost make out the contours of its face, twisted and perverse, empty eyes glinting with malice. The laughter echoed in her head, a sinister song composed of despair. Faster. We have to, she started, but a hand shot out from the dark, snagging her ankle. She buckled, falling into a tangle of branches, sharp pain surging up her leg. Mom! Ava's voice, high and terrified, sliced through her comprehension like glass. Heather's heart raced, she dragged herself back up, pulling at the girls before another shadow reached out from the darkness, wrapping around her wrist with a crushing grip. Let her go. Lily screamed, her small voice a tiny flame against the coming storm. The creature, grinning wider than any limb should allow, yanked Heather closer. A favor, dear. You should know you can't escape without a debt. The ghastly breath washed over her like a wave of ice. No. I want tea. Just leave my daughters alone. Heather fought against its grip, desperation fueling her strength. But the more she struggled, the tighter it squeezed. Choose, Heather, it hissed, mocking her. Your children or your will. Which do you cherish more? Each word felt like a knife, twisting in her gut. She couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. The shadows surged, seizing her dread, drawing from her fear like a feed. With a primal roar, she thrashed against it. Their escape was fleeting, the distance to the light stretching like a chasm, endlessly out of reach. The shadows regrouped, a cloud of desperation swirling around them, infecting their minds. Heather could feel their whispers creeping in, urging her to turn, to give in. Then she spotted a narrow corridor amongst the trees, a possible chance to break free. This way! She cried, her voice gaining strength as if awakening some buried survival instinct. Mom, wait! Ava yelled, halting, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. We have to go. Heather pleaded. They darted into the corridor, the darkness furious at their flight. It clawed at their backs, scraping their heels, trying to drag them down into the forever of its maw. As they ran, the whispers grew frantic, an angry chorus drowning out their thoughts. Leave her, let her suffer. Lily stumbled, almost losing her grip. Heather caught her, yanking her back up, adrenaline coursing. Just a little further. We're almost there. But the shadows followed, a relentless tide. The laughter crescendoed until it shattered like glass against the silence of the woods. The trees leaned closer, almost as if they were trying to shield the girls from the horrors lurking behind. The light flickered again, a heartbeat away, inviting but chaotic. Hold on! Heather shouted, plunging through the trees. She could see it now, an opening beyond, a space that felt warm, alive. The shadows hesitated just outside, fear mingling with anger. You cannot escape your fate, Heather. You won't outrun what you forget. But she didn't stop. Instead, she barreled toward that warmth, reaching out toward the beckoning light. Just as they burst into the clearing, a crack resounded through the night, a sinister snap echoed, and Heather turned just in time to see the shadows rear back, unable to cross the threshold. But their laughter continued, sharp and unsettling, twisting through the space. The girls were safe for now, but the bitter chill still wrapped around them, a constant reminder. Of what chased them. What will we do? Lily's voice trembled, fear returning as they caught their breath, their reality slowly sinking in. Heather stood amid the flickering light, dread enveloping her again. The shadows lingered just at the edge, pulsing with fury, whispering promises of decay and fear. What if this is only a temporary reprieve? And deep inside, a wicked thought gnawed at her, sparking an unbidden fear that whispered ancient truths. What if it's never over? Where would they run next? Would the darkness let them slip through its fingers, or was this only the beginning of a sinister play? The trees creaked ominously, as more shadows gathered on the edge of the light. The flickering light cast an unsettling glow, illuminating the girls' faces with a cold shimmer. Heather could see the fear etched in Ava's eyes, the way Lily's lower lip trembled. They huddled close, as if strength lay in their proximity. "Keep moving, we can't stay here," Heather whispered urgently, scanning the perimeter of the clearing. The shadows hovered just outside the light's reach, their whispers flitting between sinister and seductive. "It's just waiting for us to let our guard down. What do we do?" Ava's voice cracked, the weight of her question piercing through the haze of terror. The laughter had receded slightly, but the dread lingered, a thick fog that pressed down on them. "We need to find a way out." "More light, something safe," Heather replied, pushing down panic. She led them further into the clearing, every rustle of leaves behind them echoing the past trauma, making her heart race anew. As they forged ahead, the laughter crawled back, lingering like smoke. "You think safety exists? You think light can shield you from your failures?" A hiss slithered through the air, a taunting echo that made her shiver. "Shut up!" Lily shouted, her small frame shaking with defiance. For a moment, Heather felt a flicker of hope, the courage of her daughter igniting a fire inside her, but it was snuffed out as quickly as it came. A sudden chill swept through the clearing, like icy fingers brushing against her skin. "It knows we're here," Heather warned, and just then, the light stuttered, flickering ominously. "It's using our fear with renewed urgency." She pulled the girls forward, heart hammering in her chest. "Look for any signs, anything we can use." The three of them scanned the ground, their breaths uneven, panicked. Suddenly, Ava's eyes widened. "Over there." She pointed to a faint outline of an old, decaying shack at the edge of the clearing, shrouded in shadow. The structure looked like it had been abandoned for ages, its wooden planks warped and dark with age. "Do you think we'll be safe there?" Lily asked, trembling. "There's no choice," Heather said. "Fingers crossed that it's not another trap." They raced toward the shack, the shadows still swirling like a cyclone of despair around them. As they approached, a low creak filled the air, the door hanging ajar as if welcoming them into its dark belly. Heather hesitated, a knot forming in her stomach. "Stay close to me," she ordered, inching forward. Inside, darkness enveloped them, a thick cloak that clung to their skin. Heather fumbled along the wall, trying to locate a switch, a candle, anything to pierce the darkness. A sense of foreboding pressed against her, whispering that entering had been a mistake. "Mom, I can't see." Ava whimpered, her voice setting Heather's nerves on edge. "Shoo," Heather hushed, straining to adjust to the oppressive gloom. But then she heard it, a soft tick, a low hum vibrating through the floorboards. Something in the dark was alive. "Please, please no," she whispered, dread coiling tighter in her chest. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the shadows, sending a tremor through the floorboards. The air thickened with menace. "You think you can hide? You're a part of this," Heather, the voice, chilling and so familiar, wrapped around her like a sinister embrace. In that moment, a memory surged, a glimmer of a face from the past, a face she thought she had left behind. The sensation pierced her like a blade. "No, I didn't." Forget. The ground under her feet shifted suddenly, and she stumbled, catching herself as the shadows erupted from the corners, swirling with newfound fury. "Run!" Heather screamed, pulling the girls toward the door, but it slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. The shadows converged, the laughter rising to a maddening crescendo. "You're trapped, Heather. This is where it ends." Panic surged through Heather. She turned, searching for a way out, her mind racing, desperate for a shred of light. But the darkness thickened around them, swallowing all hope in an ocean of terror. "Look!" Ava cried, pointing to a glimmer far beyond the shadows, a faint flicker. Promising escape. But then Heather saw it, the slithering shape of the creature, coiling around the door, sealing their fate. "No!" Heather screamed, but the darkness closed in, the laughter roaring like a monstrous wave about to crash over. A shadow vaulted towards them, the promise of despair hanging thick in the air. A thought pushed through the chaos: what price will you pay to escape? As the darkness surged forward, Heather's heart raced with a horrifying realization. This was more than a nightmare, it was a reckoning. What would she sacrifice to save her daughters? The answer loomed just beyond her grasp, tangled in the shadows that crept ever closer. The shadows erupted like a storm, their tendrils reaching hungrily for the warmth of Heather and her daughters. The flicker of Ava's desperate hope turned into a beacon of dread. "Mom!" Lily cried, her voice cracking with terror as the darkness enveloped them like a suffocating shroud. Heather's instinct screamed to fight, to push back against the encircling gloom, but the reality of their situation bore down like a weight too heavy to lift. She clasped her daughter's hands, feeling their tiny fingers tremble, reminding her of the fragile line between safety and despair. "Stick together. We'll find a way," she shouted, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound strong. The low growls of the creature echoed around them, taunting, a dark lullaby serenading them into the abyss. Inching backward, Heather searched for any signs of light or escape. Look for anything. Her heart pounded, each beat mingling with the maddening laughter that reverberated through the shack. She needed to shake off the memories gnawing at her mind, every regret festering like an open wound. Suddenly, Ava tugged at Heather's sleeve, pointing to a shadowy corner. "There!" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper amidst the encroaching darkness. Heather squinted into the gloom, straining to see through the chaos. It took a moment for her eyes to adjust, for her breath to steady. An old lantern hung from a rusted nail, barely swinging but somehow alive, promising illumination if only they could reach it. "Get it!" she urged. The girls scampered toward it, hope igniting momentarily in their hearts. As Ava's hand grasped the cool metal, a loud crash splintered the air, the sound reverberating through the small shack. The door behind them rattled violently as if something immense was trying to break through. Heather felt small, startled, trapped in a tight room with a furious beast intent on dragging them back into the maw of darkness. "Mom! It's coming!" Lily squeaked, her face pale. "Just hang on." Heather looked at the lantern, uncertainty gnawing at her. What if it didn't work? What if their chance of escape was slipping like sand through their fingers? With trembling hands, Ava flicked the lantern's switch. The flame flickered for a moment, then exploded to life, casting a warm glow that pushed back the shadows. Heather held her breath as the light spread outwards, revealing the twisted wooden walls and the faces of her daughters, wide-eyed and terrified. But light came with a price. The growling intensified, morphing into a roar that rattled the very foundation beneath them. "You think that light can save you? You are mine." The voice resonated, distorted and haunting, a mirror of painful memories surfacing. Heather swallowed hard, her mind racing. "We don't have to stay here. We can fight it." She took a step forward, emboldened by the glow of the lantern. The shadows recoiled, shrieking, as if the light burned them. "Mom, will it be enough?" Ava asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, but we have to try." Heather yelled, diving deeper into the beam, dragging the girls with her. The shadows recoiled and slithered back, but they were already planning their return. "It's not over, not yet." The familiar voice taunted again, dripping with malice. They inched toward the door, hope sparking again in their hearts, but as they reached it, something shifted in the air. The ground beneath them quaked, splintering their resolve. The lantern flickered again, the flame almost extinguished by the force of the darkness surrounding them. "Hold on to each other." Heather cried out against the tumult, feeling the very world around them tumble into chaos. The shadows drew closer, clawing at the edges of their light. "You cannot escape your past, Heather," it hissed. "Let go." Heather shouted, a surge of anger bolstering her courage. A sharp crack echoed as if splitting the very fabric of their reality, the walls of the shack now warping grotesquely as the shadows surged forward, ravenous for their life force. Suddenly, a cold wind whipped through the shack, extinguishing the lantern's flame in one violent burst. Darkness swelled, engulfing them, and the laughter crescendoed, drowning out all reason and hope. "Mom!" Lily screamed, the terror in her voice shaking Heather to her core. Blackness swallowed everything, sensations fading away, leaving only a primal fear pulsating in her chest, the weight of the shadows pressing down like a heavy stone. When the darkness finally receded, they found themselves somewhere else entirely, looming shapes surrounding them, each whispering secrets. What had they let themselves into? And more terrifyingly, were they still a part of this world, or had they crossed over into something far worse? The echo of the past and the brilliance of their future hung suspended in the air, waiting for their choice to unfold. What remained of hope now stood before them, just out of reach, but at what cost would they grasp it? The chill in the air prickled Heather's skin as clarity returned. She felt a sharp pang of disorientation, as if her very essence had been yanked through a rift. The last flicker of the lantern's flame haunted her memory. Its warmth had been a fragile lifeline. Now, in this new place, the darkness felt different, almost sentient, as if it were surveying them with a malicious intent. "Where are we?" Lily's voice trembled, fear lacing her words. Ava clutched Heather's hand tighter, her knuckles white, the shadows of the shack still lurking in their minds. Heather turned slowly, scanning the murky outlines around them. The shapes were indistinct, their features obscured, yet they stirred with a slow, crawling movement, a deliberate dance of dread. She could hear whispers, a soft, chilling sound weaving through the stillness, like the rustling of dead leaves. "It's too quiet," Ava whispered, her eyes darting, searching for something, anything familiar among the towering shapes. "Stay together," Heather instructed, her voice steadier than she felt. Panic was coiling in her chest, ready to explode with every moment they lingered here. She forced herself to swallow hard, although her throat was dry as dust. The shapes began to shift, the darkness within them swirling like storm clouds. "You've entered our domain," a voice slithered from one of the figures, smooth and sinister. "Here, the weight of your past is all-consuming. What do you want?" Heather demanded, anger flaring as powerless fear threatened to engulf her. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face shrouded in shadow. Only its eyes shone a piercing, predatory glow. "To set you free or to bind you further," it crooned. "The choice is always yours." "What choice?" Heather snapped. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. She wanted to fight, yet she could feel the tremor of anxiety creeping up her back. "Your burdens have brought you here," the voice continued, swirling around them like smoke. "Every regret, every missed opportunity remains alive in the dark. It can either be your salvation or your destruction." The air thickened, palpable with tension. Heather could feel the weight of centuries pressing against her. "Let us go," she cried, the urgency pushing her bravado. For a moment, the whispers of the figures stilled. Then, laughter erupted, a chilling sound that echoed like rusted hinges creaking open in the dead of night. "You cannot escape the ghosts of your life, Heather. They know your fears intimately. How they long to spill your secrets." Heather's heart raced as memories flooded back, failures, choices left unmade, moments of indecision that now felt like chains wrapping tighter around her. "I won't be terrified anymore," she declared, her voice ringing in defiance. In the shadows, the figures recoiled as if struck, the air thickening with their rage. Heather looked to her daughters, their faces pale, but there was a flicker of hope in their eyes too. "We can break this. We have to face it together." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, as if the very fabric of reality was fragile and shifting. The figures began to swirl faster, shadows crashing into each other, their whispers rising to a fever pitch, encircling the trio. "Confront what haunts you," the voice demanded, a cacophony of all their pasts crashing down on them. "Dare to live without fear. Or be consumed." The weight of memories began to take form around them, swirling specters of guilt and sorrow. Each represented a could have been, an unfinished chapter, a lingering regret. "Mom!" Lily's eyes widened in horror as an apparition of Heather's younger self materialized, trembling and lost. "She is here to take you back." In that moment, Heather's resolve was tested. The shadows swelled, stretching out their ghostly arms, beckoning her. "Join us," they hissed, a seductive invitation wrapped in dread. What if I don't? Heather asked, her voice faltering, as the swirling darkness closed in. The figure with the glowing eyes loomed closer, and Heather felt the pulse of her past thrumming against her heart, a resonating reminder of life's choices. She inhaled deeply, steeling herself. Choose wisely, because this time you may not escape. Was the way forward through the darkness, or would they fall into the abyss of their pasts once and for all? The swirling shadows responded, the tension coiling tighter around them. The twisted choice loomed ahead, a knife's edge separating freedom and doomed entrapment. What awaited them beyond the darkness? What shocking truth or painful revelation still hung in the air, ready to tumble down like a rockslide of despair? The shadows writhed, angry whispers filling the air, a cacophony urging Heather to give in, to succumb to fear. Every ounce of her being screamed to fight back, to protect her daughters. Her breath came quick, and she could feel their small hands trembling in hers. "Mom, please." Ava's voice trembled, the innocence in it slicing through Heather's heart. She felt the weight of a mother's love and the urge to shield them from the horrors surrounding them. Gritting her teeth, she resisted the pull of the past, the ghosts of regret looming like storm clouds. "No!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the din. "You don't own me. You don't control my life." The figures hesitated, their whispers stuttering as she met the eyes of the glowing figure. Determination ignited in her chest, the specters around them twitched, uncertain. Heather could feel her past shifting, the memories struggling against her defiance. "You've taken enough from me," she declared, her heart racing faster. "I refuse to let fear seal our fate. Our choices define us, not your stifling grasp." As she spoke, a blazing warmth surged from within, lighting her spirit, pushing back the shadows. The figures recoiled, a tangible shockwave rippling through the air. "You think light can pierce darkness? You are deceived." The voice hissed, but Heather could feel the shadows wavering, darkness wavering as light emerged from her core. "Together!" she shouted, turning to Ava and Lily, whose eyes, once filled with fear, now shone with resolve. "We break this. All of us." The girls nodded, squeezing her hands tighter. Together they stood, hearts beating in unison, unfurling a burgeoning strength. Shouts erupted from the darkness, but Heather surged forward, the glow radiating from them intensifying as they plunged deeper into the chaos. "You're bound by our choices." Their strength and courage formed an unyielding beacon pushing the shadows back, fragments of doubt shedding like old skin. "No!" the whispered voices shrieked. "You want to escape. Come back." But Heather refused. Determined, she felt her resolve crystallize into something powerful. They barreled through the confusion, weaving between taunting specters, each attempt to drag them back countered by their unbreakable bond. "More!" she shouted. "We don't want your past. We choose our future." A brilliant light shot forth, racing into the darkness, erasing the memories that haunted her. Each step resonated with purpose, every heartbeat echoing their declaration against despair. The shadows recoiled like flames pushed back by a powerful wind. Then, with a final surge, they broke through, leaping into a space illuminated by hope, radiant and alive. The shack dissolved behind them, history folding in on itself, locking them out forever. They landed on grass, soft and warm beneath their feet, beneath the wide expanse of a summer sky, brilliant with colors so vivid they felt like a dream. Heather gasped, the warmth enveloping her like a hug she had longed for. She looked around, no darkness, no whispers, just the sweet simplicity of life. "Mom." Ava's voice trembled again, but this time there was no fear. The girls were shining too, reflecting the glow of newfound hope. "Look." Lily pointed, wide-eyed, to the horizon. There stood the charming colonial house, no longer menacing, but vibrant and alive, radiating warmth. They rushed toward it, arms outstretched, laughter spilling forth freely. As they reached the front porch, Heather paused, glancing back to the forest behind them. The shadows had receded, retreating into nothingness, the burden lifting like heavy fog. With the sunlight warming her skin and the laughter of her daughters wrapping around her like a blanket, Heather finally felt the weight of her past release its grip. "This is our home," she said, voice steady. "The beginning of our story." In that moment, she knew they would reclaim their lives, unchained from the shackles of fear. They would fill their new home with laughter and love, forging ahead, living boldly. "Come on, let us go inside." Ava tugged her mother toward the door, the warmth inside beckoning them onward. As they stepped over the threshold together, Heather glanced back one last time at the forest's edge, where shadows had once lurked. An understanding dawned as she realized, their journey to freedom had borne a new truth that light, choice, and love conquer darkness, every single time, and with a heart finally unburdened, Heather embraced the future, knowing they had left the haunting behind, forever. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more incredible stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us keep growing. Flood the comments section with your thoughts about this wild conclusion. What did you think of Heather's journey? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. True fans like you understand the importance of supporting the channel.